Welcome to Tech Intersect. I'm your host, Tanya Evans, and my life and work exist at the heart of law, business, and technology. Yeah, I've earned a few fancy titles and degrees over the years, but the bottom line is I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and lifelong learner, and I'm really excited that you've joined me on this journey. So what is Tech Intersect? Well, it's authentic, empowering conversations with really interesting guests who demystify complex topics to prepare you for the future. Because your future is now. And it exists where law, business, and tech intersect. Get ready to listen, learn, and leverage. Let's get started. In this episode of Tech Intersect, I chat with Manasi Vora. She is the Vice President of Strategy and Operations at Sia, where she focuses on privacy-based cloud storage products. She's also the founder of Women in Blockchain Boston, with a mission to break down barriers for entry for underrepresented groups and to increase gender diversity in particular within the blockchain industry. Prior to joining Sia, Manasi conducted research at the MIT Media Lab's Digital Currency Initiative and was the director of MIT Bitcoin Expo. She's held multiple roles on Wall Street before falling down the proverbial crypto rabbit hole, and I'm really excited to speak with her today. Now, a few reminders before we jump into this episode. After a lot of demand about having alternative dates for my free masterclasses, I'm offering 2 additional 1-hour masterclasses on everything you need to know to get off of the sidelines and into the crypto world safely, legally, and confidently without having any tech or finance experience. This class is for new entrants, but it's also for those who need to refresh their skills and learn the latest about the new digital economy, especially for women. And fun fact, women are the fastest growing group to buy cryptocurrencies, so you definitely want to make sure you're not left behind and that you position your purse and your career for the future of money and work. These masterclasses will give you an in-depth introduction into cryptocurrency, explore the similarities and differences between crypto and stocks and cash. I'll show you how to convert dollars into crypto and guide you through creating a digital wallet in 10 minutes or less. I'll educate you on how to earn crypto while learning and shopping online. And I'll also share some of those legal issues and pitfalls to steer clear of. So if you're tired of wasting time trying to break into the crypto markets by yourself, you're frustrated and confused about what crypto is and how it works, or scared to invest in crypto because you think it's illegal or unsafe, then this session is for you. Visit fromcashtocrypto.com. That's fromcashtocrypto.com and reserve your seat today. Now, it's time to listen, learn, and leverage. Let's get started. Today, I am so very excited to welcome Manasi Vora to Tech Intersect. She is the VP of Strategy and Operations at Sia, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. At Sia, she focuses on privacy-based cloud storage products, and she's also the founder of Women in Blockchain Boston. That has a mission to break down barriers of entry for underrepresented minorities and to increase gender diversity in particular within the blockchain industry. So needed. I had the great fortune of attending and presenting at events. I think it was 2019, which feels like 10 years ago, but it was sometime and it was in the past and it wasn't this year. I know that for sure. And we'll talk more about Women in Blockchain Boston and all of the fantastic work that the organization does. We'll dive into all of that and more. But first, Manasi, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for having me. I'm super excited to be here today.
Excellent. Well, I remember when you were sharing, I believe it is in a Telegram group of which we are both members, and you mentioned Sia, and I'd been doing some work in my blockchain law class and some of my own nerding out a bit in figuring out this next wave of decentralization and so many of the decentralized applications and protocols that we've been talking about for the last 3-4 years in particular. So many of those things are now coming to the fore. And I just remember everybody always complaining about we don't have anything already built. It's like, I don't think innovation works like that, but let's give it some time and give it some space. And so I'm really excited to see projects and platforms like the one that you're working on really moving full steam ahead and really taking the vision and to the implementation phase. But before we get to that, speaking of the vision and implementation, I always start with the guest's origin story to even get in either to STEM, and I know that you have a STEM background, and then, your rabbit hole experience with blockchain and crypto.
Definitely. I love sharing that story just so others can get inspired and feel that they can do the same. I do have a STEM background, but I would say I'm not a computer science engineer, which
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes a myth in the space that you need to be a computer science engineer to participate in the blockchain space. And I would completely want to burst that. That's not true at all. And my rabbit hole journey actually began when in India there was demonetization that happened in 2016, 2017. For people who are not familiar, basically the government of India overnight declared certain denomination of currencies invalid.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused a lot of economic, social distress in the Indian economy. And that got me thinking about money, what money means, and what are alternative forms of money, and especially thinking about Bitcoin. That's where I started diving into Bitcoin, learning about so many different things, not just from a technical perspective, but what it means in our society as of today.
Right.
And I've never looked back. That living in Cambridge, I've been lucky to be very close to MIT, and I started going to the MIT Bitcoin Club, which is again a lovely organization for anyone interested to learn from, where people come together, people who are passionate about the technology, not just to learn, but also work on projects together. And I just, like I said, I never looked back, and that's my journey. And last year, so my background is actually in the financial industry, mostly
Mm.
working on Wall Street in the banking sector. But last year, I made the jump full time into the crypto blockchain space, and that's when I joined Sia.
Amazing. That's a wonderful journey, as so many have really rich and diverse pathways to the space, and I think that adds to how wonderful it can be because everyone can find their lane. I think every week I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but to speak to a guest like you who literally makes the point that many different roads lead to this place and space, and you don't have to know, nor I don't think you can know everything about everything, but to find what you're already interested in. And what I hear in your story is the lifelong learner, the intellectual curiosity to problem solve in real time in a way that makes a real difference in the lives of people because you were there in a moment where it literally could be a life or death situation in terms of money and value and being able to transact. So that's a very powerful story. And you are working quite a bit in the women and women of color in STEM fields in particular and reducing barriers. Talk a bit about why it was important for you to begin and to do the work through Women in Blockchain Boston.
Definitely. And before I dive into that, I just want to re-highlight the point you made about everyone being able to create their own space in the blockchain industry.
Yes.
That's a function of the industry being super new, right? We say it's 10 or 11 years old industry at this moment, and that's relatively new compared to a lot of industries. And that gives a ton of opportunities to just come in, create your own space, create your own pathways, and bring in your expertise and shape the space. So that is definitely one of the things that excited me and attracted me to the space, the the newness and the ability to make an impact. And when I started learning about the space, I attended a lot of events, like many of us do, conferences to hear from others in the space. And one thing I'm sure you've noticed it too is I would be one of maybe 3 women in the room out of 100 people, which was pretty
Absolutely.
jarring to see. And having come from a financial industry background, I have seen the repercussions of gender pay gap, gender inequality, the problems that our financial industry is currently rife with. And given that this industry is so new, I wanted to have these conversations very early on, not 10 years down the line when we look back and say, oh, we have this problem now. Let's just talk about it from the beginning and make changes from the very start. So yeah, with that intention, I started Women in Blockchain in 2017. It's like you mentioned in the introduction, an initiative to increase diversity in the space. And we try to do that using various ways. One definitely is focused on education and access to the space. So we recently, I'm very excited about this, we launched a beginner's guide to blockchain. Over the last few years, the first question a beginner asks is, where do I start? The whole space is intimidating. There's just so much going on. Where do I even begin? And that's when we realized we need to create, an easy to use, something that people can, not be intimidated by, and
Right.
something as an onboarding tool for them to just get a taste of the space, and then they can dive into any direction they want. So with She256, which is another really great organization, we launched a beginner's guide to blockchain, and I definitely recommend all the listeners to check it out.
I will definitely include a link to that information in the show notes. And that's really important. I feel like after we finish this, let's spend some time together talking about ways there's a lot of synergy in what you're doing and what I'm doing in the online space. When I started my online course From Cash to Crypto, I didn't exactly know who my audience was going to be. I'm a Black woman in the space, and I know that women and women of color, when they see me and look at my experience, and it's like, this sounds crazy, but she doesn't appear to be crazy, so I'm going to listen to her at least for a moment, right? And so I can imagine that happens with your club as well, when people come because they trust you, they see you, and they see themselves in you. And that's why representation matters. But to also figure out, there's so many amazing things that we're doing separately, the collective we of all these amazing women in the space, and there's some synergy. And I always actually have found the network of women to be really, really powerful. And I know that the folks who take my course, I thought I was maybe going to talk to white man, 30 something, has some exposure in traditional investments, wants to learn more about crypto. And of the 24 students I had one man. Everyone's welcome, but one man. The rest were women, and the overwhelming majority women of color, mostly Black women, actually. And it was wonderful and stunning. And these are people who don't have a tech or finance background. Do you find that you have women who are drawn to your programming who don't necessarily have a tech or finance background?
Definitely. And I couldn't agree more with what you just said, Tanya. Representation matters so much. And a very simple example is having representation in conferences. So,
Yes.
most people complain that conferences are only attended by men, and because women aren't interested. And that's not true at all. If you have women represented in your speakers, if you have women on stage, you will see that other women are interested in listening to that. If it's a manel, as we call it, you wouldn't see representation in your audience as well. And this is pretty critical even from a product standpoint, right? When we say blockchain technology is going to change the world as we know, and it's going to impact our financial and social lives, then it's going to impact all the 7 billion people on this planet who are
Right.
not from one gender or from one race. And when you're building products that are represented, going to impact a huge section of the population, they should be built by people who represent these customers and users, as you may call it. So it's pretty critical even from a building and a product standpoint.
And that is such an important point because there's so many different entry points into the space. Some people will be developers. Some people will host events. Some people will be educators or lawyers in the space. Some will build products on top or maybe finance projects and people who are working in the space. because this is the type of technology, as you say, that crosses all industries and sectors. In some form or fashion, at least people have to ask the question, is this an appropriate tool given my business objectives? And sometimes the answer is no. But everybody has to have the question because the Web 3.0 is going to be what it's going to be. And I feel like you're so right. This is so early. Even, people use the term nascent, right? It just means it's early. It's a lot earlier now than in so many other areas. And I feel like women have this great opportunity to position themselves now to participate in the build of Web 3.0 that we didn't participate in or we were kept out of when I think of the dot-com boom and bust and
Definitely.
settling in. So what are your thoughts about the opportunities presented by, you don't even have to expertise yourself, but getting ahead of the curve, staying ahead of the curve and getting involved?
Yeah, and the opportunities are both in terms of financial gains and again in terms of making an impact. And I don't have to talk a lot about the financial gains. I'm not a financial advisor, but if there is going to be wealth accrued in these new protocols and these new products and platforms, then we need to be in it at the very beginning. Like you mentioned, we were out of majority of us were out of the dot-com bubble and all of that, the gains that came out of that.
Right.
But on the other hand, being able to impact products and create products that work for all rather than a certain section of the society, I think that's pretty critical. And like I said, I cannot emphasize more that the space is so early that you can come in even now, 10 years into the space, and make an impact.
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of Tech Intersect. Our conversation will continue in a moment, but first, a word on an exciting opportunity.
There's a more cost-effective and time-efficient way to reach your leading-edge learning and earning goals to put you ahead of the stiff competition in this fast-paced, tech-driven economy. You need skills, credentials, and a fast track to a competitive advantage. You need it now more than ever, and I can help. Invest in the future you've always wanted, and in as little as 3 weeks, you'll be on your way to greater autonomy, control, and opportunity in your life. The Advantage Evans method puts you ahead of the curve with condensed, comprehensive online courses, curated content to leverage your current skills and expertise in order to succeed in the new economy, live coaching with me, networking opportunities, and a digital badge on completion. Upcoming courses include From Cash to Crypto, Buying Your First Bitcoin, and Register Right, Protecting Your IP, Brand, and Business. Ready for your advantage? Well, get on the fast track to learn and earn at AdvantageEvans.com.
And now, back to the conversation.
And that leads me to, the work that you're doing at Sia now. So talk to us about what Sia is. There are levels to this, as the young folks say. So we will unpack that and then certainly talk about the Skynet launch. I went online to kick the tires a little bit. I'm super excited about it. So let's begin at the beginning. What's Sia?
I will preface it a little bit with what is Web3. And you mentioned at the beginning that this idea of Web3 we've been talking about it for a while, but we haven't seen it come to fruition because innovation takes a long time when you're, fighting the incumbents, when you're creating or recreating the way your society interacts. That definitely takes a long time, but we are very excited now that we have a product out there that's available for anyone. You don't need to have a technical background. You don't need to understand how our platform works, but you can still
Yes.
benefit from it. So that is super exciting. And I think that's a trend we are seeing across blockchain products, where initially a lot of them were super hard to use and the usability wasn't there. But recent times we've seen that everyone's focusing on end user experience and problems and trying to solve those. So jumping into what Sia is, Sia is basically a decentralized data storage layer. So you can think of it as your Amazon Cloud or Google Cloud or any of these centralized cloud storage providers and how you use them. But now think of adding the decentralized benefits to a similar platform. So, that comes with privacy benefits, and that's super critical. At the moment, we know data is the most valuable asset, more valuable than oil. But, the way Web 2 has evolved, this entire data economy has been controlled by a few organizations, and they have monetized it and manipulated it for their gains and benefit. And I think slowly the importance of privacy and why we need to control our own money in terms of Bitcoin and our own data in terms of decentralized storage products is becoming evident. So yeah, the most simple way of thinking about it is, it's a very similar infrastructure, but you get all the benefits of decentralization where you are in control of your data, you have complete privacy and access over it, and no one can stop you from accessing that data.
What are some of the frequently asked questions or concerns around decentralized data storage, or perhaps some of the myths that you're probably regularly addressing to clarify as a matter of privacy and security?
I think one of the biggest myths comes across performance and how it compares with the traditional storage layer. We are so used to things being available to us at our fingertips. We are so
Right.
used to things being available to us for free. But as we all know, those are free because we are the product.
We
That's
are
a
the
pretty,
product.
we are the product. And there's a reason why they work a certain way. So in terms of, the friction for people using these newer technologies, I think there's a lot of societal and mindset change that needs to happen. But at the same time, there are concerns around, am I going to get the same kind of performance? Is it going to be fast enough or quick enough? Am I going to be able to share my photos with my friends within a few seconds? And I think that's completely possible as of today. As of today, if you use Skynet, and we can talk a little bit more about what Skynet is, but you would not realize that it's a decentralized storage layer. You would, the entire experience is pretty close to any other centralized storage provider.
And that's so important because you mentioned a little while ago, the barrier to entry for the average person is a mountain that's almost insurmountable for most things. I think about buying and maybe exchanging crypto, or going from fiat to some form of crypto, exchanging to some other form, and then going back, to off board back into fiat. No regular person is going to do that right now. Let's just accept that premise as true, and we hope that there will be, and I think now, and you see it every day, there are greater improvements in terms of usability and the UI UX experience, and we'll get there. And we're closer than we were obviously a year ago, and certainly 10 years ago. But this idea that you don't have to know everything about everything. I'm sure you've used before the analogy that I have a great car. I don't exactly know how it works, but it gets me where I need. I know why I use it. And, I know that if it breaks down, it's going to cost me a lot of money to actually fix again. Those are the things I know, but I don't have to know the mechanics unless, you want to take a deeper dive. So just knowing that it functions well, and that externally, or from the user's point of view, they have an experience that they are familiar with and that they can trust and that they can rely on given their current experience. And so that's a really important part of any project success, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I mean that's an evolution over a period of time. From day one, your technology cannot be usable by every average user, but you have to work towards it. And that's the ideal end goal for all Web3 technologies, where people will use it without realizing they're using Web3. Giving Sia's example, if you were to use Sia in the early days, you would have to run a node similar to Bitcoin, download a node, have a decent laptop to run a node, be able to buy cryptocurrency, as you mentioned, and understand the different configurations and all of the quirks that come with blockchain technology. But that's why we are super excited with Skynet that we launched in February this year, which abstracts a lot of that away for the end user. It abstracts the understanding of the tech, it abstracts the buying and selling of cryptocurrency, and it makes it much more accessible. So, instead of giving away your data to Dropbox or any other, Google product, you can use this new technology, which is super simple to use, but you're not losing that control, you're not losing that privacy aspect.
Well, I'm really excited to learn more about it and to use it. And I understand that you want to talk about ways that users can actually use it right now, get up and get running and figure out how it works and working well for them.
Yeah, definitely. So, as if, today users can go to siasky.net, and I'm sure you can link that later, and upload or download data up to 1 GB for free, and share that data with their friends. It can be files, videos, images, anything that they would like. But I think the cooler aspect of Skynet is beyond content. So as a decentralized data storage, it provides you the ability to host your content. So for example, this particular podcast, is your piece of content, and you can control it and you can host it on Skynet. But in addition to that, we've enabled applications to be hosted on Skynet. So all these, decentralized applications, they call themselves decentralized, but in reality, a lot of their front ends, a lot of their interfaces are hosted on Amazon's backend or some centralized storage provider, which can be taken down at any point.
Right.
And they're not truly decentralized in that manner. So Skynet enables applications to be hosted on the platform. And the magical part is, let's take the example of Web2, where you have your data on, say, Twitter. When you're using it, you have your likes, your followers, your friends, all your tweet history. And if you say, if you want to move out of Twitter, you don't like it for some reason, and take all of that to another platform, that's impossible at the moment.
Right.
There are these walled gardens, as we call it. And what changes in this Web3 model is that because the data is under your control, you can take all of that and move applications seamlessly. So the data is not walled into certain applications, but it's controlled by you. So you can take all of those followers, your likes, tweet history, and move to another application if you don't like it. And I think that's super powerful, and that's going to change the way we interact, change the way our social platforms of the future will look like. And I'm
Right.
super, super excited for that future.
And no better time than this, when I think so many people are really concerned about the use of data, how big data is right now and how to stem the tide. There's so much of a loss of trust of legacy institutions, or as you said earlier, incumbents, and a real desire to find something new. Now, we're always worried about network effects, and if I'm on some new decentralized social media platform, but my friends aren't, then will I really use it? But you give people a reason, and you unfortunately make it easy for them. And we really can see the whole new world that was the original vision of this idea of decentralization, even before blockchain, right? In fact, early on, it was quite decentralized, and people complained about that because they couldn't find anything that they wanted, which led to an unfortunate result where we are. But we get to set the vision for what's to come. Final question before we get out of here. What are you most excited about in the space in general? And it certainly can be the things that you're working on now, but just as a user, maybe of crypto, or certainly a fan in the space, what are you most excited about this ecosystem?
I would say the innovation happening in the space. And it's not innovation, within couple of years. It's innovation literally every few days, every few
Right.
hours. And sometimes it's difficult to keep up with all of that, but it's also exciting to see things evolve and change in real time, and to see that you are early on in the space, which is definitely going to make a broader impact on society. Be it decentralized finance, and we recently had a really good workshop on DeFi. So definitely, again, a shameless plug, but definitely
Please.
check out Women in Blockchain's DeFi workshop if you're interested and want to learn more. But yeah, ranging from anything from DeFi to what Bitcoin can enable in terms of sound money, to what these Web3 platforms can do for social networks. There's this documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma.
I know. Oh my goodness, Mansi. Whew. I know. Go on. Go on. Tell
I,
everybody about it.
uh, I won't spoil the rumors for the the details, but definitely check it out. And we have to take control of our lives. We have to take control of our data. And this is not to scare anyone, but just so that there is awareness about the things that are available. Maybe, 15, 20 years before, we didn't have the options of choosing some of these applications. We didn't have the choice of going to anything beyond Google, but that's not the
Right.
case anymore. And even though these technologies are still nascent and they have some UX barrier, they are evolving at a speed that's pretty fascinating to watch. And I would definitely recommend, even if you are not interested in taking your career in the blockchain space and diving in full time, it's something that you should keep an eye out for.
Perfect. Well, I am excited about the work that you're doing, and so excited that we had the opportunity to spend some time together and to fan out over the space and all of the promise and the possibility for the world. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say, but also the power and the promise for women in the space in a number of different ways. I love how you're moving through the world and all that you're giving to it. And so I thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you to Manasi for sharing her work and her vision today on Tech Intersect. She reminds us that there is indeed a lane for everyone in this new digital economy, and everyone includes women and people of color. She shared the importance of women and people of color in the STEM fields and blockchain and crypto in particular. She shared with us what Sia and Skynet are and how you can get started quickly and easily, and also how excited she is and how excited we all should be about the future of decentralized file storage in a Web 3.0 world. Be sure to use the links in the show notes to try it out and let me know what you think. Final housekeeping notes. Please, please, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this episode and this podcast with your networks. Follow me on social medias and let me know what topics you'd like to hear more of and who you want to hear more from. All right, that's all for this episode. Until next time, continue to shine.
Stay in touch with host Tanya Evans via your favorite social media. On Twitter at TechIntersect, and on Instagram via the handle TechIntersect. This podcast has been produced by Stephanie Renee for Soul Sanctuary Incorporated.